Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Duolingo. It is time for another update, and a while ago, several months, I have shared with you this idea of a 1-2 setup where we had an initial 5V move to the upside. We were looking for a 3-wave correction into the support zone that we have here in yellow. This seems to have materialized, and the support levels haven't been broken. And sure, I do see these pushes below this area of support, but this is not a sustained break. This is nothing to base my expectation of a broader failure on, and I rather believe we are looking at some initial signals that a bottom would instead be in, and that we would be able to look for the next 5V move to the upside, which could very well end up being the wave 3, for which the ideal target is the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, sitting at $1,800. It certainly doesn't have to be the wave 3, and if it is the wave 3, you could very easily end up waiting several years for this pattern to fulfill, for these levels to be reached. Now, in hindsight, we might want to do an exercise and consider it possible that the wave 1 would have topped here, in which case we would get slightly lower targets for the wave 3, but really nothing changes. In fact, it would have held a bit better having only one dip below it, but still not a sustained break. And from the reversal point, I would end up tracking the same structure, and I still believe we are looking at a quite compelling setup to be had here. Now, with all of that said, I do not really care which one of these counts it is. I am looking at the reversal where I'm identifying a double 1-2 setup, a setup that can allow us to look for a potentially quite explosive move within a follow-up wave 3. Now, this structure is not a simple setup. It's not an initial 5V move to the upside. Maybe after these 5 waves, yeah, you could have considered this to have been a wave 1 up, and then the wave 2 area of support would have actually been reached for a potential entry. But this doesn't mean the setup cannot work. While we do not necessarily have the strong inclination that we will get an additional 5-wave pattern up with high likelihood, we still have very compelling levels of support to track, as within this structure, within such a pattern, I want to see the momentum pick up. Consider that right now, I'd probably have this structure build the initial wave 1 of a very internal wave 3 already. Within such patterns, I do not want to see deep retracements, and I in fact want to see plenty of strength emerge. I want to see shallow retracements and strong moves to higher prices. Now, if this wave 2 had already bottomed, which would actually have to be most likely the case, otherwise the entire setup would be quite prone to failure, the ideal target for the follow-up wave 3 is the 138.2% extension of the wave 1, around $166. This move has already become quite interesting, as we are looking at a near 30% increase from the current levels, but I'm not necessarily convinced by the smaller timeframe structure, unfortunately, where it appears it is trying to build an initial 5V move to the upside within an even smaller degree. So what I would consider it possible is to have here something like a leading diagonal in a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. And certainly it is possible to identify different patterns and even counts within this structure, but this is what I find to be probably the most active setup you could be tracking, one of the most reliable patterns, if you will, based on the structure we have internally, as it really struggles to actually track anything more than 3 waves within either of these waves to the upside. So yeah, I really have to lean on this idea where I would expect still one additional high within the wave 5 within a 3-wave pattern, while holding the levels of support extending down to $123. Once we have these 5 waves up, we will have the ability to look for an additional, a third 1-2 setup where I expect to actually get quite shallow retracements. I expect once again to see strength within such a pattern. I want to see the momentum increase. I want to see a strong breakout. We might not even see the levels of support for a follow-up wave 2 be reached within such a structure, but this doesn't mean that a setup cannot be had, that the opportunity cannot be had, but we might actually need to end up allowing a bit more room for the wave 2 to develop, to buy potentially at higher prices and allow a looser stop loss, as we might end up seeing potentially even a slightly deep retracement, potentially bouncing off of this trend line once more. Potentially after we complete this wave 5, we get another bounce into maybe the $120 region. Yeah, something like that is a very realistic possibility before seeing this next move up, see a stronger explosion. But one thing is certain, we need to see continuation of this trend that is building higher lows. At this point, it is still extremely early. We do not have many signals that this stock has bottomed. And we definitely do not want to see a negative signal, a signal that would be rather suggesting that the setup is failing, that we are going to see actually a complete failure of the yellow structure. I'm not denying the possibility that this may still work out in something like a leading diagonal, where we could get even a deeper retracement, but it's not going to be a trade I would necessarily be interested in being a part of. After all, we actually have to even look at volume here, and we have to notice that the big money hasn't stepped in, and this stock will certainly need the cash injection to get past these upcoming stronger levels of resistance, yeah, around $156 here, but probably even more importantly, around $190 here, and at $208 in this area. These are going to be rather difficult to break without seeing also a stronger spike in volume and some stronger candle that would cause the momentum to increase even further. But for now, there isn't much else to add here. I'm looking for the next wave up to complete here an internal 5V move to the upside, and I'm looking for the next 1-2 setup for a potentially quite attractive setup to be had. I even find it quite likely for this wave 5 to top within the region of this larger wave 1 top. Yeah, we have some structural resistance in that area as well. So for now, we will stop here. If you want even more from me, you can check out the Patreon, but yeah, these are the levels. This is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoyed the content and want to support it directly, check out the channel membership, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.